Hello and welcome to the virtual classroom where today we'll be discussing activity-based costing. Throughout the course, the concepts we've been learning have been revolving around determining the cost of something or allocating the cost of something to individual products. And this chapter is really no different. We're trying to take our overhead or our indirect costs and we're trying to allocate them to a specific product. But we use that, or we do this in a very systematic way by first assigning all of our overhead costs or indirect costs to different activities. And then we take those activities and we assign the cost of those activities to the products. It's just a better, more accurate measure because we're working under the assumption that when we engage in activities, it causes certain costs to increase. So if I can have detail or determine the detail of all the activities associated with making a product or delivering a service or providing a service, then I can estimate the cost of that activity. And then I can come up with a rate and then use that rate to assign the overhead costs to the end product. So there are two stages. First, we assign the cost of the activities, and then we take those costs from the activities and we assign them to the products. And we call this ABC costing or activity-based costing. And again, it goes back to the underlying theme that anything we do to make a product, there are some activities involved, and those activities will cause cost to increase or they use resources. So if we can determine what those activities are, then we can come up with a better estimate of our costs when allocating those costs to our products. So these are the 4 steps involved in activity-based costing. First, we need to identify the activities that make our costs increase. So all the activities associated with delivering goods or providing a service. Then we determine what is the cost driver for each activity or what makes the cost go up, whether it's the number of units we produce or the number of machine hours. It could be a bunch of different things. Then we find a cost rate. So essentially we're just dividing. We're going to take the cost associated with the activity and we're going to divide it by the cost driver. It's sort of like finding a predetermined overhead rate for every single activity. So when we allocated overhead in previous chapters, what we learned before was we used a predetermined overhead rate where we took estimated overhead and we divided it by and estimated activity. Well, now we're going to do that for all of our activities. So we'll have an estimated cost for each activity and we'll divide it by the estimated cost driver for that particular activity. And then in step 4, we're going to use those rates to assign costs to our products because every one of our products will have some actual activity as it relates to the cost drivers. Once we see this with numbers, it will make a little more sense, I promise. So I keep saying the term cost driver, and this is one of those terms we talked about in one of our earlier chapters, but it's a factor that makes a cost increase or causes a cost to happen. So here we have some identified activities, and there are different cost drivers for each one of those activities. Here we see the different types of cost drivers. They could be volume related, batch related, meaning if I have a certain number of setups and I'm processing a whole bunch of units at one time, rather than just looking at processing 10,000 units. Or it could be product related. If I'm dealing with multiple products, there are some activities that are associated with making one product and a different set of activities associated with making another type of product. Or it could be facility related, meaning relating to the plant as a whole or the production facility as a whole. So each one of these, whether it's volume related, batch related, either one, they all have individual cost drivers that will match the type of hierarchy level that we're dealing with. So here is an example. Let's look at ABC or activity-based costing with some numbers. So here we have 2 products that we are making. And we have detailed information about the number of units we've made and the machine hours. We see this for each individual product and we see it in total. The next set of information is our cost information. Remember, there are three basic costs associated with making a product: direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. We get to see this in detail for direct materials and direct labor because these are direct costs, so I can easily trace them to my individual products. Overhead needs to be allocated. So I have my overhead numbers in total. The problem is I want to know what portion of this assembly overhead should be charged to J25P and what portion should be charged to J40X. And same thing for packaging. We are going to use ABC to help us get these total numbers allocated to these individual products. So step one, we need to first identify the activities. If you're looking at a problem in a textbook or looking at a problem in Connect, then the activities are already provided for you. You don't have to dig to find the activities. If we're looking at this from the standpoint of the real world, then you're going to work with your engineers, your production managers, the cost accountant will work with all of them and determine what the activities are that are associated with making a product or associated with a specific department. So for our two departments, we have three different activities for each department. The next step is to identify the cost driver. So I know that my activity is assembling, but the cost driver is machine hours. And we get detailed information on the machine hours for each one of our individual products and in total. We see this for all of our individual activities and their respective cost drivers. So J25P has 6,000 assembly hours and the other product has 30,000. Of course, we combine those and that's how we get our totals. Again, that's more information that is provided to you typically in a Connect assignment or in a problem. In step three, this is the first time where we have to do some real work in terms of calculating. Now we get to see what these overhead rates are. And we compute these rates by taking the estimated costs for each one of our activities. And in this case, it may not be estimated costs, it may be after the fact, so these may be actual costs. But the point is we're looking for the overhead cost or that indirect cost. Then we divide that by the total for our cost drivers. And we were told what the cost drivers were back here. So for assembly, we're going to take that cost and divide it by 36,000. Setting up machines, we're going to divide it by the 440, whatever the cost is. And then we come up with individual rates. So it's sort of like having a predetermined overhead rate for every single activity. Now it's time to multiply out so that we can determine what portion of the assembly overhead should be charged to product J25P and what portion should be charged to product J40X. So we're going to take each one of our rates and we're going to go back to this slide and we're going to multiply it times the cost driver volume for each product. So that $30 rate that we found, we multiply it times the 6,000 and we multiply it times the 30,000. And that's how we determine the assembling cost that is allocated to each product. We do the same for every single activity and its respective rate. Once we multiply everything out, then we add down, and that's going to give us the total overhead that is charged to each one of our products. When we look at our total numbers should match to the overhead costs that we had in our first slide that gave us the information. This slide here, the total overhead should match up because all we're doing is allocating those costs to the individual products. We're just shifting numbers around. So now when we look at this in detail, now we can compute a product cost. And this is why this is important, because I want to know how much it costs me to make one unit of product, because a lot of times I want to base my sales price on the unit cost. I want to make sure that I actually make a profit, that I have some gross margin in there. So I want to make sure that I set my product cost high enough to cover all of my costs, not just my direct materials and my direct labor, but also my overhead. And with this ABC allocation, now I have a true total cost. And then I can divide that cost by the number of units to find the unit cost for each one of my products. Now, if we were using the traditional predetermined overhead rate, this is the unit product cost that we would have calculated using numbers, using information that was already provided to us. We want to compare that to what we see for ABC costing. In the middle here, we have a department rate. So what if we had different rates for the assembly department, for the packaging department? This is the unit product cost that we would have calculated. Now, I want to compare that to ABC costing because ABC costing usually provides me with a better measure because I have more rates, because I'm looking at all of the different activities associated with making my product. If I would have used a plant-wide rate, then I would have thought that it cost me $48 to make J25P and $105 to make J40X. When in reality, with a better measure, it's actually a whole lot cheaper to make J25P and a whole lot more expensive to make J40X. So what would have happened is, just based on this 105, I may have priced this product at 125. But when I use my better measure, notice that if I'm selling it for 125 and under ABC costing, I come up with a unit cost of 127, I'm actually losing money. It could be that J40X is a more specialized product, and the activities associated with making that product consume way more resources than dealing with J25P. So if I just have one rate and I'm meshing everything together, I'm not going to get an accurate measure. That's why we use ABC costing. We have more rates, and those rates, the costs are driven by the activities. We can use this same four-step process in administration. So it doesn't just have to be for product costs. It can be for any type of indirect cost, whether it's marketing or admin costs. And we can use those to allocate those marketing and admin costs to our products. So again, we can come up with a better measure or a better estimate of our unit product cost, or our unit cost in total. And that takes care of ABC costing. Make sure you check out the walkthrough video where I do a problem with you. I appreciate your time and attention, and I hope you have a great day.